CTV's Colton Praill joins us now from Ottawa. Colton, good morning. That's the big question. How do they pay for it all?
That's just it, Renee, a billions-dollar question. We know that the government has already announced about $38 billion in new spending, but at the same time, they've also promised that the deficit won't go up in this budget, the deficit at $40.1 billion. And so how do you square that circle? How do you make the math work? It's the question on everyone's minds, and we've already seen some of how they're planning to do that. If you look at, for example, the defense spending that was announced, a lot of that was backloaded, really significantly backloaded. If you look at, for example, of that $38 billion, a vast majority of it is on housing, but $17 billion of that is through loan money. So not only is that money that won't necessarily go out the door, for example, if the provinces don't agree to sign on to these programs, or if the pickup for these programs isn't as high as the government expected, but it's also money that eventually the government will get back. And so they're trying to find ways to creatively announce this spending and creatively work programs while also getting some money back. But at the end of the day, you still have about $21 billion that is expected to hit the government's bottom line. So where are you going to find that money? How are you going to ensure that the deficit doesn't go up, but also that you manage to lower the debt to GDP ratio or keep the annual deficit below 1% of the GDP, both things that Chrystia Freeland has promised that the government will do in this budget? Well, there are a couple of options. One, like I said, you can backload that spending, but that's only part of it. Two, you can try to save $21 billion elsewhere, and that's something we're certainly going to be looking for. Will there be cuts to any programs? Or three, the biggest thing that we've heard sources and rumors talking about, and we are watching very carefully for, is tax hikes. And we've seen the way that this government has talked about tax hikes in the lead up to this budget very specifically. Chrystia Freeland saying that they will not raise taxes on the middle class. And then later on saying, hey, remember that time back in 2015 we raised taxes on the wealthiest Canadians? There has been hints towards the fact, and we know from sources, that this government has considered a wealth tax of some sort, along with some form of windfall profit or excess profit tax on either some corporations or all corporations. That's something that we're waiting to see if that's going to be in this budget, because that is one way they could try to square this circle. They could try to balance that budget, but there are significant concerns about the economic repercussions of that, especially given our very low productivity in this country.
Now, it seems like the Liberals have announced a lot of this budget already, Colton. Is there anything left to announce?
Absolutely. I mean, this has been focused on generational fairness is the term that Liberal insiders are using. We're expecting the title of this budget to be something similar to that. Even if you think back to the Liberal cabinet retreat, they went back to a slogan from 2015 talking about fighting for the middle class. It's all about, and if you heard it yesterday in Justin Trudeau's speech, talking about Gen X and or Gen Y and millennials, Gen Z, good Lord, sorry about that, Renee, Gen Z and millennials making up the significant portion of the working class. This is all about trying to target that money towards them. And so one area that we know there needs to be funding for, or at least has been promised, is pharmacare. Are we going to see more money towards that, even if it's just for contraceptives of some sort in the next year? Will there be any dollar figure attached to that? Because at the moment there isn't. The other area that the Liberals have promised funding for a long time, and I know is very important for a very small subset of Canadians, but it could be a matter of life and death, is that disability benefit. That's been a real issue for people who are on long-term disability, who right now are finding it very, very difficult to just afford the basics, given the rate of inflation, given the cost of living, and the supports that already exist at a provincial level that aren't covering the growing costs. That disability benefit is something that a lot of Canadians are looking for, that the government has been promising for a long time, but as of yet still hasn't put a dollar figure next to. We're watching to see if that's going to be in this budget as well.